I'm Lorella. This is Plan B Orchard and Farm. Today I'm going to be making a quick and easy sourdough sandwich bread right in my bread machine. I fed this sourdough last night, so it's ready to go this morning. It's beautiful, bright, and bubbly. This recipe takes 1.5 cup plus 1 tablespoon of water, 1/2 cup of sourdough starter, 4 cups and 3 tablespoons of bread flour, and 2 teaspoons of salt. Just 4 ingredients. That's how simple this is. This sourdough recipe is great if you're new to sourdough, or if, like me, you're a busy person. We are homesteading, developing our homestead while we both work off-farm jobs. So I wanted to get into making bread and making sourdough, but some of the recipes are so complicated and it takes so much time. This is the perfect recipe for me because it can be done quickly. You're gonna see I can go do other stuff while the bread machine does all the work. Before we started our homesteading journey, I was not much of a cook. I could cook casseroles, I could make tacos and hamburgers, but I really didn't do a lot of scratch cooking. Things came out of boxes or cans. That's just what I knew how to do. And as we started to move towards a more healthy lifestyle, more self-sustaining, I started to learn how to cook from scratch. So that's one of the reasons that I decided to get into bread making, and specifically sourdough, is because it's so much better for you. And I love the fact that this recipe only has 4 ingredients, and they're all things that I can pronounce, and they're things that are in my cabinet pretty much anyway, except for the sourdough starter, which I got from a friend. All right, there's my 4 cups. I need 3 tablespoons. A lot of people who make sourdough really get into it scientifically. They weigh everything instead of measuring it, and to me that was really intimidating. But then I got to thinking, about sourdough and what its uses were. I lived in Alaska for a short time when I was in high school, junior high and high school, and in Alaska they call people who have lived there a really long time, like the old timers, they call them sourdoughs. And because sourdough lasts such a long time and it can survive harsh conditions and all those things, and I started thinking about it, and I'm pretty sure that the people who started making sourdough didn't have digital scales to measure it precisely with. I'm pretty sure they were putting handfuls of this, and they were using actual cups, not scientifically measured exactly measuring cups. And so I find that knowing that allows me to give myself a little bit of grace and forgiveness, and I can make sourdough with measuring cups and without a scale, and it's gonna be just fine. And if I don't measure exactly the 3 extra tablespoons or something like that, I don't worry about it too much, because I don't have time for it, 1, and 2, I don't want to put that kind of pressure on myself, you know what I mean? It's like just making it through every day is a win. The fact that I'm providing a fermented dough that's healthy for my family, the bread that's out there, it's the better the bread you can eat, that's a win. So if the measurements aren't exact, I'm okay with that. If you have a preferred salt, if you want to use the pink Himalayan salt, I've done that. If you want to use coarse salt or kosher salt, I've done that. I really couldn't taste the difference, but you might be able to. Whatever you like, whatever you have in your cabinet is the way I say to go. This blade goes in the bread machine. This is what actually mixes the sourdough. So I'm gonna put a little bit of butter on it just to keep it from sticking. It'll be a little bit easier to get it out once we get to the dough phase. And just get it all over here really good and thick. I'm gonna start by pouring in the water, then the sourdough starter, and then the flour I'm gonna scoop in with my spoon on top of that. Just so I don't make a big mess. If I just dump it in, it'll be like everywhere, water and flour and all of that. When it gets where the water's mostly covered with flour, then I can go ahead and just scrape it from the bowl right in. I'll set my bread maker on the dough cycle, which is number 7. Press start. This is going to be an hour and 30-minute cycle, and it will alternate between mixing and resting. I was invited to be a part of this collaboration by Anna from the Fermented Homestead. We actually met at our local farmer's market. I didn't even realize that she was in this area, and I was so happy that she invited me. This is fall into sourdough. It's perfect sourdough weather. It's the first day of the year I'm getting to wear my flannel. It's misty and cold and rainy outside. It's perfect for baking bread. So I'm sure you're going to find these videos very helpful. I believe there's going to be a video posted every day for the month of September, but the playlist or the link to the playlist is going to be in my description, as well as a list of all the other channels that are involved. You can also follow the hashtag fall into sourdough, as well as look for the logo that was in my, what do they call that, thumbnail? So those are different ways that you can find all the different great sourdough recipes. There's going to be recipes made from the discard, recipes made from fed recipe. It's just going to be fabulous, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what I can learn about sourdough bread as this month goes on. The bread machine has finished the knead and rise cycle that it does. Now I'm going to remove the dough for an extra rise. I tried one time to just leave the dough in the bread machine start to finish, mix all the way through baking, and it really does need a separate rise time because it just came out super dense and chewy, a little bit difficult to eat. The flavor was fine, but the loaf with malt wasn't just perfect. So we're going to do an extra rise. I have a bowl, and I'm going to just lightly coat the inside of this bowl with some olive oil. It helps it to not stick to the bowl, and it gives it just a little bit of a nice flavor. Also going to put a little bit on my hand, just so my hands are coated so the dough won't stick quite as much to my hands either. Alright. This part is a little bit tricky because the dough sometimes doesn't want to come all the way out of the, what do you call this, the bread pan right away. And the blade is still in it, so I've got to get it out of here without it just falling apart, like, you know, ending up a sloppy mess on the counter. Alright, come on. Come on, here we go. Okay. Alright, it came right off of the blade, so that's nice. And I am going to work this very minimally just to give it a nice round shape, like that. And then making sure I didn't leave any in there. I didn't really. I'm going to just kind of turn it over in the olive oil so it's coated all over with olive oil. And then I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap. And I mark it on the cling wrap with a permanent marker because obviously it's just going to come off and get thrown away. And then I'll be able to know how much the bread has risen when I'm ready for it. Now I'm just going to set this in a warm place for about 3-4 hours-ish. Basically, I want it to double in size. In this bowl, it will actually rise and fill to the top of the cling wrap. Easy enough to gauge when it's ready. And I am going to put this in my laundry room, which doubles as my seed starting room. My house runs a little bit on the cool side, and instead of using the bread proofing cycle in the oven, I have a heat mat that I plug in that goes like under seed trays when I start seeds. It's a perfect temperature for getting things to rise, and it's a really low energy product as compared to warming my whole oven. Look how nicely that dough has risen. It is all the way to the top of this bowl. I've cleaned the bread pan. I'm going to put it back in the bread maker without the blade in it, of course. Otherwise you just end up with a hole in the bottom of your bread. And then I'm simply going to take this out. Let's see, I say simply, but oh yeah, it's coming out very nicely. Okay. And I'll shape it just a little bit like I did prior to rising. Oh, it's so nice though. Look how much bigger it is. So I'll just quickly shape it like this, just stretch it a little bit, and then I'll put it in the bread machine on the bake cycle, which on my bread machine is number 11. And that's it. Now we just wait while it bakes. You know what that beep means? The bread is done baking. I'm going to turn it out onto this rack, and the pan will be hot. It did just bake in there, so use these oven mitts, of course. All right, and then I'm gonna let it sit here. Woo, it's toasty and cool completely, but look at that. That's lovely, isn't it? That's a pretty loaf right there. We will come back after it's completely cooled to give it a taste. This sourdough is beautiful, smells amazing. I'm about to make a piece of toast. One thing that's interesting is after it's toasted, it doesn't look brown like bread from the store does. It doesn't look toasted, but it still gets crunchy. It tastes toasted. I don't know why. Oh, it's beautiful. Yum. This bread will last just about a week in our cabinet before it starts going bad. It doesn't have any preservatives in it, so it does need to be eaten before it spoils. We have pretty high humidity here. If you live in a drier climate, it might last longer. I don't know. There you have it. Really good, really easy sandwich sourdough bread in your bread maker. Let it do the work for you. I also have a video on how I rehydrate sourdough starter from dehydrated starters. So if you want to see that, click right here, and I'm sure that video will be helpful to you.